ranking the Kazekages. This is the last of the ranking the Kage videos. So, as it comes to these Kazekage, I select as Green Angel the second Kazekage. See, I believe they said that he died because of, infighting within the Sand Village. An assassination attempt took his life. He was seen at the first 5 Kage summit with the first Kazekage, but he was able to take, he took command after the first Kazekage, right? But he wasn't there long enough. He was the next most powerful shinobi, and he was at the, first summit, right? But during his generation, he was probably the weakest one out of all of the Kage. Who was reigning during this time, the second generation? That was Tobirama, that was the second Raikage, that was Mu and Gengetsu. He was definitely the weakest in his generation, and out of all the Kages, he's also the weakest. At number 4, I have the first Kazekage. The first Kazekage, goddamn, he was, concerned about his village. They had a weak-tailed beast, and he was worried about people coming to, fuck their shit up. So these villages gave them funds so they could bolster their defenses, build a wall around their village. And then they had the Shikaku, which was essentially the weakest tailed beast. But he knew how to, keep it at bay and everything else. As Kazekage, he knew how to, seal the tail beast inside of a Jinchuriki host. And he was confident in that. And knowing that, and, the second Hokage doesn't have nothing like that. Or the second Kazekage, doesn't have anything like that. He was at the, summit, and then he was there too. So what this tells me is he was more powerful than he was. They looked about the same age. The second Kazekage being a little bit, younger, but still around the same age. The village liked him to lead the village. He used sand. He fought against Tanuki too. But not as much as other, people. But knowing this, the first Kazekage is 4th on this list. The first Kazekage is 4th on this list. Now, it gets to the interesting one. The third most powerful is the third Kazekage. Or not the third Kazekage. My bad. It's Rasa, Gaara's father, the 4th Kazekage. He took over for the third Kazekage upon him being assassinated. Rasa ruled over the Sand Village. He had to suppress his son a couple times. He had to use what's called gold dust. He found himself in gold dust to keep the one tails, weighed down so it wouldn't fucking destroy the village. He had to, put gold dust on it because it's heavier sand. And he had to, seal the one tail back inside of Gaara multiple times. He wanted to kill his son so many times because he was becoming a problem for him when he wasn't supposed to be a problem to begin with, but he was. And then, eventually he was supposed to go to the, Chunin exams and see what was going on there. But Orochimaru approached and killed him. He died to Orochimaru in an ambush, but still, he died to Orochimaru, a weaker version of Orochimaru, who did have the reanimation jutsu at this point, but still not as powerful as he is at the end of the series. But Rasa he died, but then he got recouped, revived by none other than Kabuto. when he got revived, that's when we actually saw him like use gold dust on the allied shinobi forces. And Gaara was standing in front of him, and he was like, "Son, you know how I had to like seal away your tail beast and shit. You don't have the Shikaku no more, so you might even be at a disadvantage against me now. You don't have that extra power backing you anymore." But Rasa was still defeated and other things. Rasa has gold dust. Those other two didn't. I have Rasa at number 3. At number 2, I have the third Kazekage. See, he was held as the most powerful Kazekage, even when Rasa was, alive and died and everything else. They were like, he was the most powerful out of all the Kazekage, because he had iron sand. He could basically turn this iron sand into like dust or sand, and then he can make it re-solidify, turn it back into a solid, create spikes, to stick people with, to stab fucking people to death. And the way he died was to Sorcery of the Red Sand. Sorcery defeated him with poison, by the way. I don't know if people knew that or not. It wasn't no puppet game. The third Kazekage would have had him beat. It was the goddamn poison that he had. Chio wasn't around to, save his life, so he ended up dying. And then his body became a puppet for Sorcery to use. Because he knew about, secret arts and of puppetry and other things. But iron sand, magnet release, this is shit that like nobody has. It's like a Keke Genkai. Nobody has that shit in the Sand Village, except, Gaara knows a little bit, but not like that. His son actually knows it. Gaara's son. I'm trying to remember what his name was. In Boruto, that boy has iron sand just like the third Kazekage. So in my eyes, like once Gaara's gone, which I have Gaara at number 1, his son will be the, sixth Kazekage. But that's, a side note. The third Kazekage is at number 2 because Gaara, man, our boy Gaara is at number 1. Like, he's been through a lot. We've seen Gaara's progression. We've seen him, we understand that Gaara was born and then his mother died, but his mother's energy was inside of the sand. See, the sand comes to protect him because it has some of his mother's chakra in it. And it, like, automatically comes to defend him and shit. It's a natural defense. It's there. Now we saw like certain people be able to bypass that because they had speed and they were able to, break through. And and even with that though, Gaara still had his like sand armor on his face, in his body. So Gaara has, certain things, right? He uses sand. He can create sand from anywhere. We saw him do that shit against who? Kimimaro. He turned the ground into sand. Goddamn, he caused that shit to, become sand, erosion and everything else, right? And the sand, grew, and it grew en masse, and then he was able to, use, sand prison, sand tsunami. He fought against Datara. See, that fight, make people gas him down. But what I always say is, Gaara had to protect his, villagers too. He had responsibilities. He knew about all that. He's actually a good Kazekage too, not just in power, but in like, character too. He was like, well, I can't let my people die. If this sand falls on them, there's going to be a whole lot of people that die or get hurt. So I have to like, in the middle of this battle with an Akatsuki member, I have to send this sand over the wall. And then I have to get back to fighting him. And in that, he kind of forgot that the sand had clay in it because he ripped off Datara's arm, and then Datara put the There was still detonation clay in there. So then he was caught. Then he died and came back to life because Chio, used reanimation. Then he went to the Five Kage Summit. And there he was like, did you guys forsake yourself? This ninja world, we can't be fighting amongst each other when we're here to, go against the Akatsuki. You guys wanted to use the Akatsuki for this and that. And, I actually have firsthand experience with the Akatsuki. They came from my life. They hunted me down and actually killed me. I'm only alive because of Chio. Y'all don't know a fucking thing about that. You would use your tail beast for power against my village and each other's villages and fuck around like that. When did y'all forsake yourselves? Gaara then, tried to fight against Sasuke, saying, yo, Sasuke, this shit's kind of crazy. You don't need to come here and fight. Revenge is not needed or anything. Sasuke got through that, but that's Sasuke. Sasuke is one of the, main side characters. Gaara then became, leader of the Allied Shinobi forces, one of them. And he went out and he fought against his father, who got recouped. Then he fought against Gengetsu too. Like he helped the third Tsuchikage, Onoki, fight against, Gengetsu, Mu, and Naruto defeated the third Raikage. He defeated Gengetsu and his father, both. Gaara did. He defeated Rasa and he defeated Gengetsu, two previous Kages who were powerful. Proving that he deserves to be there with them, fighting against Madara Uchiha. And he was there doing that shit. Now, he did get defeated because this is Madara. This is a completely different beast. I have to tell his power scaling and shit, like, there'll be 90s all over that shit, y'all. But, he did what he could. And then he's still the Kazekage in Boruto. There's nobody else in the village who can even, fuck around with him, not his brothers and not his sister. He's leagues above them. When they were children, they were fearful of him. They knew that Gaara could kill them at any fucking, minute. He could still do that, but he's a different guy. He's, changed. He's the best Kazekage in terms of character and power, and I do believe that as a Naruto fan. And I have him at number 1. So this is ranking all of them real quick again. The second Kazekage is at number 5 because we don't know too much. We knew that he died during his reign, though, due to assassination attempt. And then at number 4, I have the first Kazekage. We know he used stand and he was able to, suppress the, Tanuki as well, but nothing much. Nothing too much about him. Then we have Rasa at number 3, gold dust user. He spams gold dust. He puts that shit down to weigh down the, Tanuki multiple times, not just on one occasion. Then at number 2, we have the third Kazekage who used Iron Sand, the Keke Genkai, shit that nobody else has except Gaara's son in the new Boruto. And he was held as the most powerful up until number 1, Gaara came through. Now, Gaara died, but then he came back and he reigned for, he's still the Kazekage in Boruto. He has staying power. He ain't weak. So that is my ranking of the Kazekages in Naruto. So be cool, call in the corner, and then let me know what your ranking is.